Syrians, they were, mind you, they were coming from war zones in Syria. So they were related, and we have a lot of evidence and a lot of proof found in their phones, pictures, videos, and other things, showing that they weren't even um, uh, participating even in murders. And we have crimes that were recorded by the police in here in Cyprus. Thank God, okay, there were not hundreds, but some of them.
In April 2024, Cyprus declared a state of crisis as irregular sea arrivals surged, with over 2,000 arrivals in just the first quarter of the year. The challenges echo those of the 2015-2016 migration crisis, but in a uniquely complex national context. How does a small and divided Mediterranean island at the crossroads of Europe, Middle East, and Africa manage migration pressures? Today, I speak with Nicos Nouris, who served as Cyprus Minister of Interior from 2019 to 2023. During his tenure, he became a central figure in shaping the country's migration policy, amid growing pressure from both Brussels and the Green Line that divide the island. So, thank you very much, Nikos Norris, for being with me today to discuss about your experience.
Thank you too for the invitation.
We will discuss Cyprus' ways of navigating various migration crises, confronting black markets and criminal networks involving migrants, implementing policies in the UN patrol demilitarized zone. Nikos Nouris also offers a rare insider's view on why Cyprus remains outside of Schengen and what this reveals about Europe's border priorities. So, how did you encounter migration issues and what led you to become Minister of Interior?
Okay, actually, I'm in politics more than 30 years, starting from the local authorities. I was a councillor, then I became a deputy mayor of Nicosia for several years. Then I moved for almost 9 years to the parliament, and from there, the President of the Republic proposed me to become the Minister of Interior. At that time, Minister of Interior, it's not the same as now. At that time, Minister of Interior has a number of responsibilities, including migration. Nowadays, it's under the Deputy Ministry of Migration. At that time, it was under the Interior Minister. And obviously, not only local authorities and a number, it was at that time the biggest ministry of the Republic. So I think that I was chosen because all these years I was dealing with the subjects of the Ministry of Interior, both in the local authorities and later on at the Parliament. I was participating in the Internal Affairs Committee of the Parliament, dealing with the reform of the local authorities, migration, and not only elections as well. So I think that was the reason. But it's true that, as you just mentioned about the migration crisis, in 2015, we have the first signal. We have the first migration crisis in Europe. Mind you that at that time we had the entrance, the arrival of millions, mainly Syrians, through Turkey that were trying to enter through Greece to Europe. At that time, I could say that Europe was totally unprepared. I mean, to host this huge number of migrants. But I have to acknowledge that, including my country, that despite the fact that we have the first signal back in 2015, we were not prepared well, especially on the level of infrastructure. And in 2020, when again, especially Cyprus, when again we have faced, let's say, the second row of migration crisis, we face a lot of problems because we didn't have the facilities, again, mentioning, especially on the level of infrastructure, to host all these people. So it was quite hard.
So, you were attracted by the challenge? Or
Oh, it was my duty. I was the Minister of Interior. I didn't. I was not. I was not appointed as a Minister of Interior to handle the migration crisis. it happens
Mm.
because it was just 6 months, more or less, after when I was appointed minister. So I have to handle it, and I did my best.
So here you refer to the 2020 migration crisis because you became
Yes,
minister in
yes.
2019. Yeah.
Actually, it started late February of 2020,
At the time of
along with COVID pandemic.
Okay, so we'll zoom in on this crisis, which I think is indeed very important. But let's zoom out a little bit beforehand, if you would like to understand what is at stake with migration. So obviously, migration is, you mentioned the Syrian crisis, heavily related to the geopolitical situation in the Middle East and North Africa. But if we want to understand also what's going on at the internal level mm, about migrants, would you say that migrants in Cyprus are heavily involved in the black market for work?
Well, to tell you the truth, as soon as a migrant will arrive in one country, either legal or illegal, is becoming part of the society. This is undoubtable. So I have to say that in Cyprus, especially during my tenure when I was Minister of Interior, yes, we have found out that the involvement of migrants in illegal activities in Cyprus, black market, as you mentioned before, um, unfortunately, it was very significant. And uh, it was not in all levels. It starts with minor infractions, but we have seen out that there was a growing trend towards their involvement either in drug and human trafficking, which is extremely serious, and in some cases, especially with the involvement of Syrians, and I'm highlighting Syrians because Syrians, mind you, they were coming from war zones in Syria. So they were related, and we have a lot of evidence and a lot of proof found in their phones, pictures, videos, and other things, showing that they weren't even um, uh, participating even in murders. And we have crimes that were recorded by the police here in Cyprus. Thank God, okay, there were not hundreds, but some of them, and that was very, very, very serious.
You mean that these people had a violent background in
Correct.
Syria,
Correct.
and you think that, yeah, it shaped them.
It's a matter of mentality. They were carrying. That's why I said I have nothing. I mean, especially for the Syrian nationalities, but I'm talking about the things that we have found out. Either the Ministry of Migration, and of course the police itself. We were dealing with people, some of these people, because some of them, they are fine, they're working, they're already participating in the society legally. They were having the benefit of international protection because they were considered people in danger from the Assad regime. But at the same time, we had these fanatics, I would say, coming from the north, from Haleb, Idlib, for this area from Syria, that they were involved in the military groups. And when they arrived here in Cyprus, they knew to do something very well. For example, they were involved in nightlife. They are offering protection. They were dealing with the local networks.
Protection to
To people that they were asking in the business of night, shops and magazines and night and clubs and like this. They were offering the so-called protection of nights.
against who? You mean they were kind of
they
mafia
mafia
groups?
Yes,
that were
yes, it's a local networks, and of course, not only. I mean, they were involved as well in smuggling, and we have a lot of smuggling, not only coming from the occupied part of Cyprus, but again, some of them they were involved in smuggling from the arrivals from sea, especially from Lebanon, because from Lebanon we didn't get through the boats Lebanese. They were Syrians. They were crossing from Syria to Lebanon, and from the seashores of Lebanon, they were coming here.
How long does it take to cross from Lebanon?
It's not, well, it depends. We're talking about, there were all these people, poor people, they were packed from these smugglers in small boats that put their lives in danger. And sometimes it took them 18 hours, sometimes it took them 12 hours. It depends.
Oh, it's not so okay.
Yes, quite
true.
close.
But they arrive here in the southern part of the island or in the north?
Correct.
In the southern part, they arrive.
It's the area controlled by the Republic. It's not the southern part. Sorry
Yes.
for correcting you.
Okay. So, so you move directly to drugs, mafia, but are migrants also involved in non-criminal activities in the black market? That means they work irregularly,
I
but
don't
for
know
instance,
what's
in construction or services. No.
well. Once we're talking about black market, I don't know. That's why I said from minor infractions to something more serious. For example, we had incidents of people of these networks issuing fraud documents, travel documents, and they caught them in the airports or in the ports, or even worse, they were coming with some documents. I mean, illegally from. I'm talking about the maritime arrivals from the sea, and they were holding fraud passports. We have found out that most of these networks, obviously, I mean, every time someone in the areas controlled by the Republic was related to them because they were exchanging messages and all these kind of things. But mainly these networks, they were located either in the occupied part of Cyprus, in Turkey, in Lebanon, and in Syria. These they were highlighted. I mean, if you interview someone with the police, if they accept to do so, they will confirm exactly what I'm telling you because as a minister, I was in close contact with the police. We're trying to find out, to highlight from where this problem was coming out. And as I told you, it was mainly from the occupied part of Cyprus, Turkey, Lebanon, and Syria. Networks that either they were smugglers for drugs, for human trafficking, for issuing fraud traveling documents, or these people, they were doing all these things. And of course, uh, when we're going to discuss later on about migration, if you have in mind that 95% of illegal migrants arriving on the island through the Green Line, you can understand why I'm saying why it's quite obvious that we are focusing these areas from where the problem starts.
Just to provide some context, the Green Line is this demilitarized zone that separates the two parts of the island. And so what you suggest is that these smuggling networks, they bring migrants in the occupied part of the island and then help them to cross the Green Line. And then what's the plan for them to stay in the Republic or to go elsewhere in the EU?
Okay, that's the main core of migration in Cyprus, what you are asking for now. Shall I answer with an example? Back in 2020, when we have this flow of migrants, we have spotted out that I mean, through using the information from Europol, from Interpol, from the local police, and of course Frontex from the EU, it was more than obvious that mainly the mainstream they were flying from African countries with Turkish Airlines and another national carrier called Pegasus that operates from Turkey to a number of countries. They were flying to Istanbul and from Istanbul from African countries. Mainly it was Senegal, Congo, Nigeria. It was these kind of countries. They were arriving in Istanbul. From Istanbul, they were flying to the occupied airport in Timbu, in the occupied areas of Cyprus. And from there, we have evidence as well. Turkish Cypriots mainly with some minivans, they were choosing specific locations on the Green Line, and they were crossing them to the areas controlled by the Republic, paying something around between 2 to 300 euro from the airport in the local part, cross them from the line. Once they were crossing the line at that time, that was a problem of the Republic because They were crossing the Green Line, which is not our external border, but as you said, is the ceasefire line. Um, we don't have control in all the 184 kilometers of the Green Line, which is quite huge. So the only thing we could do at that time is to collect them, to pick them up, and to take them to the only existing reception center we had at that time at the Republic, which was Burnara Center. Burnara Center was not a closed center, was not a detention center, was a reception center, meaning that once they arrive there, they have to be examined physically, mentally, vaccinated, especially in the period of COVID, and kept them over there to check them out about documentations, fraud documents, and all these kind of things. At the same time, because the numbers were huge, the capacity of Burnara at that time was not more than 400 to 500. We reached some time during COVID period, 3,000. So it was one of the things, that's why I say we have done a lot of things at that time because we try under severe pressure to increase the capacity and the facilities over there to the center and to build up our whole policy, which I don't know if you have time, we can talk about later on. But mainly that was the issue and the problem.
Yeah.
Crossing the line, and then finally, I mean, what you asked for, all these poor people, when we interview them, and we say, what do you want? Why you come to Cyprus? They say, we don't want to stay in Cyprus. That was the answer from all of them. We told them that we're coming to a European country, which is Cyprus. And from here, we're going to be forwarded because I want to go to Germany, I want to go to France. If I have to make a poll between the migrants, they all wanted to go to Germany. So the answer was always the same. Why you are here, what you are looking for here? Said, we don't want to stay here. The smugglers told us that by the time that we're going to arrive to one European country, i.e. was Cyprus, then we can go wherever we want. They never told them that we are not in the Schengen area, so they cannot freely go. And secondly, if you can believe that, they knew that Cyprus was an island, some of them. They were arriving here and they thought that they could walk to Germany or take the car and go to Germany. Because we're talking about very poor people that they were taking advantage of them, paying fortune sometime, and of course put them in danger. Because especially the maritime crossings,
Mostly men,
yeah, mostly men.
young men.
Yeah, especially from the Green Line, it was mostly men under the age of 30.
Mostly young men from Africa.
Yes.
Okay. And so we reached that point because we were interested in black market activities and we rapidly focused on migrant smuggling networks
Mhm.
from Africa to Europe. Just before we close this chapter, is it that that's the main area of black market activities for migrants, the drug plus migrant smuggling? They are not involved in construction or delivery, agriculture, not so much.
This is the minor infractions that I mentioned before.
Yeah, it's minor.
Of course, they are involved.
They are involved.
But to tell you the truth, if, for example, you ask a migrant to be involved in drugs, he knows that he's doing something illegal.
Yeah.
But sometimes the locals, even Greek Cypriots, they're taking advantage of these poor people. For example, as we mentioned before, agriculture. We have several incidents happening that these people that they were illegal migrants, they couldn't take asylum. They were walking around the island because we couldn't keep them. We didn't have the capabilities to keep them in centers or to host them. And we're looking somewhere, I mean, to work, obviously legally. And some people, they're taking advantage of them. They tell me, okay, you want to come to the fields? You can work with this amount of money on a daily basis. Once you finish your job, you go. That's illegal.
And so the point is to avoid social security payments. Do you have a minimum wage?
They couldn't employ them legally because they didn't have asylum.
In any case, yes, for legal reasons. So you think that because you suggest they wanted to take advantage of them, they were saving on some costs.
Of course,
Yeah.
obviously,
Which
and
was-
not only the cost. They have no obligation against them for anything. Healthcare, paying them salaries permanently, keeping them in the workforce for the whole year. Let's say, for example, if you go to specific agriculture areas, they are busy for 5 months a year, no more.
Mm.
So once they are well done, they fire them. And they were hiding them.
do you have a minimum wage in Cyprus?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so it was a way also to
Nothing to do with the minimum wage. They pay them whatever they want.
they pay them above the minimum wage. You
They
think?
didn't have rights. I mean, if someone is illegal in one country, what shall I do? And he will come and say to the employer, you know, I want the minimum wage.
So they were paid below that rate.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we have a lot of, I mean, we have such incidents. And we're chasing this because this is undeclared work.
Undeclared.
Yes, of course. And we chase these people, I mean, with the police, with the Ministry of Labor. But again, I mean, it's something that once you have 6% of the population, they were migrants, it's the highest among the 28 European countries in Cyprus. You can imagine that it's quite easy to find all these people because most of them, more than 90%, they were illegal arriving.
And in those 6%, you don't include therefore British nationals. So
I'm
the
talking about illegal migrants.
illegal 6%
No.
of the population is made up of migrants who arrive irregularly.
Yeah.
All right, that's indeed a huge number. So are they involved in agriculture? We mentioned it. Tourism, construction.
Yeah, but okay, but it's a bit difficult in the hotels, for example, to use them because they're quite obvious. They will have to show up, so it's a bit dangerous for the
Even in the
persons.
kitchen,
Well, maybe in the kitchen, but as you said, I mean, they are looking for the kind of jobs that they were a bit hide.
yeah. So potentially in many parts of
Many
the
parts.
economy of the island.
Correct.
And so, of course, from the point of view of the Ministry of Interior, the most serious challenges are those involving drugs and
Human trafficking.
human trafficking. And for drugs,
The
because you have
situation with human trafficking, I have to focus on that,
that's
especially with the minors. I mean, in 2020, it was amazing. On a daily basis, they were arriving on the island, kids from 10 years old up to 17 years old, minors, totally unaccompanied from Turkey. They were flying on the planes. Can you imagine? They were putting on board minor unaccompanied. They were arriving in Dingo Airport, and from there they were passing here. And at that time, my colleague, Deputy Minister of Welfare, they were trying, I mean, they went crazy. They were trying to find small hotels in specific areas of the island to host them. But it's not only to host them, because when you're talking about kids, you have to take care of them. It's not just you get them a bed and a plate of food. No, this is not the way that for an adult, for example, you offer him a place to sleep and eat. And okay, you're talking about kids. And this country, we didn't have the facilities and the infrastructure for hosting these huge numbers. It was one of the, let's say, fights that I was doing at that time in Brussels, trying to explain them that by the time we know from where all these people they are coming from, that you have to take measures. And I was asking, and I have involved in the final stage, the president itself of the republic was involved because I explained to him that I need the maximum political support in order to control the situation. And what we asked from Europe, the Europeans, and we told them, okay, Turkey has to comply with the agreement of 2016. You remember, Barin, after this crisis?
March 2016.
Correct. There was an agreement between EU and Turkey to host 3 million Syrians in Turkey. Of course, they were paid. But at the same time, it has some obligations, Turkey, not funneling and forwarding migrants to other European countries, including Cyprus. So one of the things that we ask, Brussels, they say, okay, by the time that we are facing this humanitarian crisis in Cyprus, you have to push Turkey because we don't have diplomatic relations, obviously, no, to comply with what the agreement of 2016 states. And at the same time, we ask a second thing, which was extremely important, one of which I'm happy to say that it succeeded. We asked Frontex for surveillance of the south coastline of Turkey, and especially the port of Antalya, because from there they were departing the boats to the occupied part of Cyprus. So we asked Frontex, you should uh, uh, supervise, control the departure from the south coast of Turkey, and at the same time, we want you to have an office of Frontex in the Istanbul airport checking the flights to Cyprus for prevention of sending us illegal migrants and especially unaccompanied minors. And I'm happy to say that especially the second part of what we have asked for, it happens lately 2022 and 23. And this is why now, this is the main reason now that we have reduced the numbers in arrivals, not because a miracle happens, it's because there is a checking out from Frontex in the airport of Istanbul.
Very interesting. And I understand the smuggling aspect is crucial, but if we just want to finish with the drug, and so I have understood that the smuggling market is addressed to people who want to go to Germany, you already mentioned. And what about the drugs? Are they for the local market or for broader European market?
Well, I'm not aware to tell you the second part of this question because honestly, I don't know if we have such an incident. I mean, if we are a transit country that they're being used, but definitely I can answer you the first one. And I can tell you, yes, that across the green line through the fields, we have not only drugs, they are carrying drugs, obviously,
Which type of drugs?
mainly hashish and cocaine. That's the main thing.
From where?
From the occupied part. They're coming from the occupied
They're
part.
produced where?
No, don't say they're producing, but it's a state that it's an occupied part of Cyprus that everything is so relaxed over there. So once the human trafficking is taking place, it's quite easy to take as well. I mean, to have drug trafficking as well. Something additional to that supports what I'm saying. If you ask the customer, it might be very interesting to have an interview with someone from the customs services of Cyprus. We are losing millions of taxes because not only drugs are coming from the Green Line illegally, cigarettes and alcohol on a daily basis. Every night they're carrying in cars with the most easy way through the fields. Um, I can even tell you brand names, but I think it's not appropriate. Well, I can tell you about the absolute vodka. It's crazy what is happening.
It comes from where?
It's from the occupied part.
Yeah, but it's produced where?
I don't know
Yeah,
what
no.
it's produced, but I know that there is labeling anyway. But on the same thing, if you ask the legal importer of the absolute vodka, I can provide you with his name and his phone if you want. He could tell you that it's crazy what is happening. The consumption of the drinks are rising among the years, and the imports are going down. Why? Because they're coming illegally from another part. So all these things, it's the things that are actually some of them, but some of these, they force us that we have to have surveillance measures on the green line.
Yeah. So here we are closing down on the on the main on the main problem, which following you, I understand that you have in the north of the island, if I may say, authorities that are at least passively sabotaging many of the efforts of the Republic to levy taxes, to control the flow of people. So let's move to that now. So uh, are they passive or are they doing it on purpose? Because if I take the airport, the plane regularly, we are always controlled. Is it that their policy is just not to control people at the Istanbul airport, which I mean, I don't think it's the case? Or do they turn blind eye on that? Do they do it deliberately? How is it possible that you have these migrants, unaccompanied minor without papers, flying in planes from Turkey or
I think it's a combination of all these things because uh, the Turkish Cypriots that they are Cypriot citizens. They have travel documents of the Republic of Cyprus. They are considered the Turkish Cypriots are considered as European citizens, so they can fly with IDs that they were issued by the Republic of Cyprus. They are close to 100,000, something less than 100,000. But the population nowadays in the occupied part of Cyprus is calculated to be close to 500,000. So most of these, I mean, the rest of the other than the Turkish Cypriots are people that they do come from they're Turkish citizens. They're not Turkish Cypriots. So they have no relation, let's say, with the occupied part and of course with Cyprus. So, but they control because they have been sent to Cyprus. They have taken advantage of our territory, of our fortunes. I myself am a refugee as well, both from my father and my mother. We have lost everything in the occupied part. I know who is staying now in our house in the occupied part. There are people from the Anatolia. Uh, so all these people that come over there, these people, by the time that they have no relation and connection to the country, they're just taking advantage of the situation and they're doing a lot of things. So that's why I said that is a combination. They can be, I think they are passive as well. One of the things that definitely are causing us a problem is the demography, because by the time that already in the occupied part, they imported, I can say, all these 400,000 Turks that they have over there. Why they do that? They are changing the demography of the island. The Turkish Cypriots, if you go back to 1960, um, when the Republic of Cyprus was established as an independent country, they were minority, the Turkish Cypriot. Now they are trying to become a majority by importing people from Turkey. So I have to say that they're doing this on purpose. At the same time, they're doing other things on purpose. For example, by forwarding illegal migrants towards the areas controlled by the Republic, they are causing us financial problems, security issues, and demographic issues. Because if we have now, instead of 1%, that Europe states that it's acceptable to have 1% of migrants in each country, 1.1. That's the level in Europe. That's what they.
You mean the irregular migrants?
Yes. Cyprus has more than 6. So problem number 1, demography. You're changing the demography. Then I have to mention the religious issue. Most of them, the extreme majority of them, they are Muslims. Some of them, they are fanatic Muslims. They are coming.
We're talking about Turkish people.
No, I'm talking about migrants.
Also the migrants, yes.
Because people that they are arriving here, we're talking about the 6%.
6%.
Yeah, they are Muslims. Some of them, I said, they are fanatic Muslims. So you involved in a different culture and in a different society, a larger than acceptable percentage of these populations. And then security issues. we mentioned before, murdering, black market. If you go back to the history, we never have this kind of problems. Still, Cyprus is considered as a safer country than more other European countries, many other. But at the same time, we have an increase crime incidents in Cyprus that we didn't have never before. And quite a lot of them, I don't want to be absolute on that. Quite a lot of them, migrants are involved. So yes, I think that in the
So can you
occupied
give
parts,
examples of these crimes in which migrants are
I told
involved
you, I mean,
typically?
we even have assassinations that happening with paid assassins that they prove to be foreigners and migrants.
What type of people are assassinated?
Sorry.
Business owners?
Yeah, either most of them they're murdering people that are between them for the nightlife, controlling of the nightlife, which is always money.
And just to dig into that particular example, what is what leads in nightlife to assassinations? Is it
Money,
prostitution or
prostitution, drugs,
illegal gambling?
everything, everything. It's the same all over the world once you go. And when you, I mean, if you open the TV and go and find one American movie, you will find out exactly the same thing that is happening in other countries too. Mafia is mafia. Black market is black market. It's trafficking, it's drugs, it's money laundering, it's whatever it is. And when you want to exit the country, you ask someone to give you fraud traveling documents. I mean, this is the same thing. I mean, wherever you go, the only difference is the size. If you go to a small country, obviously it's smaller, the business. But if you go to other countries,
So it's relatively small.
it's
Eh,
controllable yet.
What is
Still,
where is do you think Cyprus is a hub for money laundering or just local money
it
laundering?
doesn't prove that we do such a thing in Cyprus. No.
No big scale money
No,
laundering. No, it's
no.
just one sector among others. Okay. So yes, okay, I interrupted you. So let's go on. This Turkish policies you think are partly deliberate to
Yeah, I say that
to
I
weaken,
that-
and the end game is what?
well, the end game is that nowadays we have the recognized Republic of Cyprus, which is a member of the EU. Mind you that the whole island is a member of the European Union, but the acquis is not implemented in the occupied part of Cyprus. So it's a different story in the occupied part. They don't have the same level of living in the occupied part. So obviously, they're doing things that sometimes maybe they were trying to give problem to the other part. But I think that I was quite clear when I say that it's a mixture of some decisions. For example, um, they have more than 40,000 Turkish troops in the occupied part. I mean, if someone can tell me that they cannot control who is crossing the green line, I would say that then it doesn't work the, how they control. If a Greek Cypriot tries to cross the line to go to the occupied part, it will be, they will catch him in a second. They have surveillance measures, they have monitoring cameras, they have everything. So why they don't do it from the other way? And they allow them. And let me tell you something now that it's very sensitive, but it's another thing that I wasn't able to talk about these things while being a minister for obvious reasons. UN, United Nations. What is the role of the UN in Cyprus? The role of the UN in Cyprus is to control the so-called buffer zone, which is not occupied area, but it's an area offered by the Republic of Cyprus for having a distance between the two armies, the occupied army and the National Guard of Cyprus. And in the middle, we have the UN that they have to control and secure that nobody is crossing. They never, ever being helpful to avoid migrants crossing from the occupied part to the areas controlled by the Republic. Why? Personally, I don't know, and I don't want to comment that. But when I had conversation with them, The question is that, but it's not it's not in our role.
Mm.
And what is your role? Your role is not to allow crossing. It doesn't say on the forehead of someone that I'm a Greek Cypriot, I'm Turkish Cypriot, I'm a migrant. So for security issues, they shouldn't allow it. They didn't do nothing at all.
And so the end game, you think that so they are trying to what's the word in English? Turkify, make the island Turkish, make the island Muslim,
Well,
and then reuniting it under their own terms.
um, if you ask me, the answer is yes. I mean, Turkey shows up that they're having a policy, not a short-term policy. They're always having a long-term policy. They even looking forward for the next couple of decades. So yeah, I can assume that they can be capable for everything. So we that's another reason, coming back to the subject that we're discussing, that's another reason why we had to take surveillance measures on the Green Line. On the political aspects, we have to be at that time very careful what we do, because some voices, they were coming and say, you divide in Cyprus, which is ridiculous. I mean, by taking deterrent measures as a government on the Green Line, we say that what you're doing, I mean, you're putting barriers on the Green Line, but we have obligations as a country, as a European country. First of all, first of all, we have a regulation of 2004 when we entered the European Union as a full member. At that time, the President of the Republic signed the so-called Green Line regulations. What does they state about the Green Line? They say that whoever wants to cross the Green Line from the occupied part to the areas controlled by the Republic has to do it from the so-called legal points and not from anywhere else. Okay, number one. Second, he has to have legal travel documents and arrive to the island from a legal port or airport, meaning that a migrant, illegal migrant that arrive illegally on the island is not allowed to cross. So we have obligation as a country to terminate these crossings. Then the next step, we trying to say that it's our political goal to enter the Schengen zone for a number of reasons. But the Europeans, why we don't enter the Schengen zone? We are not yet entering the Schengen zone because we have so many disputes, especially on the Green Line, and that's come from the Europeans. One of them is migration. We don't have enough control.
Disputes with other EU members.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because it's the problems we have. We have lack of control in our entire territory. We have a green line that the migrants can cross in the way they're doing that. And if we want to enter the Schengen area, we have to have control. Then the second thing that again, why we are not entering Schengen, in my mind, it's the risk of illegal migration. Cyprus, you mentioned before, geographically, we're in a location in the crossroads of three continents. Nearby, next to us, we have so many wars. Now we have Palestine, we have the Syrian war, and a number of other wars. We have flows of migrants consistently, all the time, constantly, all the time. So EU fears that if we have an open border uh, with the Schengen uh, cooperation, that probably will exacerbate the migration numbers. Then, of course, it's a main goal for us. I mean, to enter the Schengen because we are very much looking forward. We want, for example, to boost. We're 100% sure that this will boost our tourism. It will create benefits for the construction company because especially for the housing and residence, because a lot of Europeans, they want to choose Cyprus to come without all this checking out in the borders. I mean, to buy a house in Cyprus. So for us, yes. But on the other hand side, for the last years, I'm aware for the figure for last year, up to now, EU spent finance Cyprus for both for illegal migrants and for strengthening the security issues in Cyprus, 292 million euros up to now towards the way to Schengen. So it's a lot of money.
What is this money for?
This money has been used both for migration,
So it's
enable us to handle the migrants,
Okay.
and at the same time strengthen the borders control in the airport of Larnaca, the so-called SIS system, which is a system that it has to
Schengen information system.
Yes. It needs a lot of, it's an infrastructure. You have to pay the IT, you have to pay the infrastructure in the ports, in the airports, checking out all the documentations. They spend already almost close to 300. It's 292 million.
Over which period of time? It's not
It's,
yearly.
it's the last 4 or 5 years.
Over 5 years, they spend this
Yeah.
amount.
I'm not 100% sure about 5 years,
Okay.
but I know the amount of money that is correct.
Okay.
It's 292 million up to today for this specific issue. So I think that personally, I was participating in discussions for entering the Schengen area several times.
Yes.
And because we wanted it very much to happen for political and as well for other reasons, economic reasons, as I said before. But again, I was feeling that they have restrictions. And I think that the way that they were handling Cyprus, I mean, towards our participation in the Schengen zone, it's a lengthy procedure. I know that. But the reason that it's lengthy procedure, because we are the second country among the Europeans that we didn't enter the Schengen zone. So hopefully will happen.
Yeah, very interesting and complex situation here on the island of Cyprus. So you think that Turkey has a deliberate policy of settlements on the island, of Turkish settlements on the island, plus deliberate channeling or actually turning a blind eye on inflows of migrants from Africa, the Middle East, who are Muslims, also so as to change the demographic composition of the island.
I am.
You suspect it.
I'm not only suspecting. We have enough proof that it will show up that it's a part of a general policy that they're following. I mean, nowadays, President Erdogan was in Cyprus just a few days ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, that's Saturday. It was one of the main things that he told the Turkish Cypriots that they have to introduce hijab in the schools, which is something that it's ridiculous for not only for a small island, but for a European country. I mean, to force them to do it as Muslims, because Turkish Cypriots are not fanatics in religion. They are more close, they are more liberal, they are more European, let's say. Turks, especially coming from Anatolia, it's different. But he tried to import something that is happening in Turkey, in Cyprus, to the Turkish Cypriots. This thing shows the way that they're thinking, Turkey, that they want to turn out the island of Cyprus to become a Turkish territory. It's a simple example, but it's very important.
You say that Cyprus for Greece and the Crimea of Ukraine, that Russia.
I hope they are not correct.
I see what you mean. So yes, it's a very concerning situation, and that you would end up with a referendum after the force, and you would end up with a majority pushing to join Turkey. even the territory of the Republic potentially. So I understand it's a geopolitical threat that is absolutely crucial, and that connects here to migration.
Well, the answer to that, I mean, as a, let's say, indirect answer to that is that why Turkey has not become yet, and I think you won't become ever, member of the European Union, due to all these differences that it has from Europe. So Cyprus is Europe. So by the time that Cyprus is Europe, it's exactly the same issue as in Greece, as in Italy, as in France. So it's another thing, it's another story. But unfortunately, we're suffering from the occupation.
And you mentioned that you are a refugee from the north. Your family is a refugee. So, and you mentioned that you know who lives in your house. So I understand that this settlement policy has been achieved via incentives, including possibly giving out for free properties seized in the north from Greek Cypriots. So, for instance, people who live in your family house in the north, how did they get this house?
I'm not aware about the details, but I know that from the first years after the invasion, they distributed the plots in some Turkish Cypriots, and then gradually they start to import people, especially from the Anatolia, from the east part of Turkey to Cyprus. I don't know the reason why, but gradually they were arriving. And then the next step is that till 2018, till Grand Montana actually negotiations at that
Which
time.
was this negotiation? Which was this negotiation?
And Grand Montana in Switzerland, it was the last serious negotiations to solve the Cyprus issue in 2018.
Okay.
Till that time that we have, let's say, a chance or willingness to solve out the problem. The situation in the occupied part of Cyprus was a bit stable, let's say. They didn't make too many investments. They didn't import a lot of other things in the occupied part because we were talking and discussing how to solve the problem. And of course, at that time, we believed that there was going to be an exchange of land as well. Since then, the things have changed because it seems that we are far away. Unfortunately, I don't want to be a pessimist, but it's I'm not optimistic that we're going to have a solution of the problem. So if they're not going to be exchanging of land and give us back some of the occupied part, this is why nowadays they are doing things that they are building up mosques and they're changing the demography of the island. They're trying to turn out the occupied part of Cyprus as another part of Turkey.
But so they distributed those properties in the north to first Turkish Cypriot, but perhaps, as you suggest, there was another supply of seized properties
Definitely.
that allows them to distribute them also to people from the mainland, from Anatolia.
Correct.
And but they sold them or they gave them out. You don't know what was the allocation mechanism.
I'm not aware of this.
Okay. All right. So this is a complex situation, but to some extent, it seems to me that if there was not this division and even a unified authority controlling the island, many of those problems could disappear, including and a restoration of property rights would also prevent this kind of inflows from the mainland if you use these properties to create incentives for people from Anatolia to come to the island. So if you restore property rights and you have a normal housing market functioning, you would not have those settlements from Anatolia to Cyprus that
You do that. I mean, we don't have any control to the occupied part.
Yeah, I am thinking broadly in terms of a possible solution to this.
The solution is to have a solve for the Cyprus issue. If we don't have a solve in the Cyprus issue, by the time that the Republic of Cyprus has no uh, way of intervening in the occupied part, we can't do nothing. I mean, it's they're doing everything by force. They have the power. It's Turkey against a small island. So even if on a political level we have a very good position, we're equal position among the European countries, but at the same time, Turkey is Turkey. So uh, if we don't have any kind of solution, and a solution that will be stable within the years, that will secure that it's going to be stability on the island. Unfortunately, we can't do much in the occupied part.
You mentioned there are 40,000 Turkish troops on the island. So I understand that Turkey, Ankara has really a decisive role in any form of solution. What could lead them to accept a reunified island with a joint authority that would be able to avoid many of the problems that you have mentioned? What could lead Turkey into an
Well, I
agreement?
give you a general answer. In politics, it's always give and take.
Yes.
So the only give and take towards Turkey, because Cyprus can give things, it's Europe. So this is why the Cyprus governments all this year, we never said that we are against the relations between Europe and Turkey, because we are very much willing, as you said, to find a solution, an alternative, a give and take way. So if Turkey will take, for example, a sort of partial accession to EU, but on the other hand side, yeah, I think that only if the United States of America or if Europe, that are the allies of Turkey, especially the Americans, they, for some reason, again, geopolitical reasons, they, like now in Ukraine, what Trump has been doing now in Ukraine, he's dealing in favor of his country for some specific reasons, uh, with the Ukrainians, pushing them to accept the and giving a part of the land of Ukraine back to Russia for some specific reasons, not because he loves them. So again, this is politics. I mean, it's a give and take, but in the horizon, I mean, it doesn't show up now here in Cyprus that there is uh, something that will allow us to be optimistic that this will happen at least close to the coming years.
Yeah, so you think that Turkey may be using the Cyprus issue as a bargaining chip with the EU as a way to
Definitely.
blackmail and extort
Yeah.
some form of membership, which would be quite unprecedented in the history of the EU. No country has achieved membership via blackmailing.
He's dealing with
At least geopolitical blackmail. You can always find economic forms of.
Look, I have participated in several ministerial councils in Europe, and always when Turkey was invited as an observer, especially when we had the agreement back in 2016, as we mentioned before, for migration, Turkey was always telling the Europeans that yes, I do have an agreement with Europe, but that is not implemented in the case of Cyprus, which was one of the member states.
Okay, I see. The 2016 agreement. Okay. Do you think that, I mean, in terms of a deeper level of trust, do you think the Europeans could trust the Turkish government on this issue?
Well, this is
If, for instance, there
it's-
was an
it's-
agreement for membership?
um, I don't think I'm the appropriate person to give you an answer, an honest answer, because I'm a Greek Cypriot. I don't trust Turkey or nothing.
Okay, that's, yeah,
So-
that's an answer.
Yes. So because it show up, not because I have something with them. I mean, one day they say like this, the next day they say, look at what is happening in the last couple of years. their policy against Greece, their policy against Israel. They are shifting one day from the other according to the geopolitical situation. For example, Syria. Now they have invaded the North Syria and they say we're going to stay here because our rights are here. So how can I trust them?
And so there are 40,000 Turkish troops on the island. How many troops do you have?
Something around 6,000, I think.
Oh, a huge imbalance.
Yeah.
And
Regular.
I should know that you're not part of NATO.
No, we're not part of NATO, despite the fact that sometimes some of the governments they thought about that. But obviously, you should know that becoming a member of NATO, you have to have unanimous approval from other countries. One of the countries is Turkey. Turkey will never vote for Cyprus becoming NATO member.
Okay. So if there
So
is-
again, that's interference of the.
I am not a NATO fan personally.
No, I'm talking about it's not a matter of fun or not. I'm talking about
I think
realistically.
I mean, we need to think beyond NATO nowadays. And so if there is a new European security organization that replaces NATO in the future, Cyprus could be part of it. And this could also help restore the balance of power on the island, which I think in any case will be important for any possible settlement of this issue. So it was a really interesting conversation. Thank you very much, Nicos Nouris. What are your projects now that you are moving on?
I mean, the education sector. I mean, I was previous. I mean, before entering the parliament some years back, I was a visiting professor to one of the local universities here in Cyprus. I was teaching pharmacology because I'm a professional pharmacist.
Oh.
But nowadays I'm chairing to one charitable foundation of an English school in Limassol, and I'm consulting on health sector as well. It's very, very interesting. I'm back on the private sector again.
Okay.
It was a great experience being not only member of the parliament, but being member of the government as well, and of course the local authorities. But private sector is always more dynamic, and you can explore yourself, and you can do totally different things. And I'm happy that I'm healthy, and I'm having now a second, let's say, career.
Okay.
In the private sector.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Nicos Nouris, for your.
It was a pleasure to exchange. It's a huge thing. Migration will never end. I always used to say that by the time that people are living in the planet of Earth, we're going to have migration. So migration, we have to face it like this as a social issue. It's not an economic issue. This is why I disagree when I heard last year, and that's my closing statement, back in June 24, when the government of Cyprus agreed to sign the so-called Common European Asylum Agreement, because it doesn't satisfy the main concern of our island. What was the main concern? We have decided, among with the other 4 Mediterranean countries, Greece, Malta, Italy, and Spain, we have formed a coalition, the so-called Med5 coalition, because we have common interest. We have decided, and we claim from EU, that if we want to have solidarity in Europe regarding migration, we have to redistribute the migrants horizontally among all the 28 European countries, so as to have a balance, meaning that the 6% of Cyprus should go down to 1%, and possibly the 2% in Greece should go a bit further down to 1%, something like that. Instead of that, instead of this solidarity, the new common European policy replaces this clause and states, which for me is totally unacceptable and it's not even humanitarian. He said that instead of redistributing migrants to Europe, we will pay to the host country 20,000 per migrant, and we're not taking any migrants to any other country, which is ridiculous. And because we have to shame. Otherwise, we never have to talk again about solidarity. This is not solidarity because migration is not an economic issue. Migration is a social issue. If we want to say that we are dealing it on a humanitarian basis, we have to deal like this. If we pay for each migrant that remains in one country, this is not solidarity. This is an economic issue, which is not.